Welcome to Watchtower History.
I think he did the right thing here. Maciej did the right thing. He decided to appeal. He wasn't trying to get restored back into the congregation. He was just hoping he could get more recordings so that we could continue our story. So as we said before, in Maciej's first live stream judicial, he created new history for Watchtower History channel and for many like him. He's treading new ground here by live streaming that. We also live streamed his appeal.
James 5, where he talks about if somebody is sick, to call the elders and they'll help us. The spirit of this meeting is based on James 2, verse 13, which says, "For the one who does not practice mercy will have his judgment without mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment." Right. So, our brothers have met with you before.
Yes.
And as a result, they took the step of disfellowshipping. Jehovah is a merciful God.
I don't doubt it. Jehovah is, yes.
And he gives every opportunity for us to be able to help somebody. And this really is a loving provision. We've left our families to...
Come on, it's not loving provision. I've spoke to those guys for 3 hours, 4 hours in total. So I'm sorry, but this is not loving provision. You know, unless your love is a different definition.
Well,
has a different definition.
We've left our families to come.
Well, I appreciate it, right? Because it was my appeal, but you know, I would rather call things by their proper name. Let's don't make up definitions. You know, so I'm sorry, but you know, I did not set the tone of this conversation. That was like 4 hours of setting the tone. So, you know, that's why you know, I know when it's heading. So it started like this as well, but it went very rocky quickly. So, but okay, let's say it's a loving provision.
Well, would you like to explain what led you, why you made this appeal?
So first of all, I just disagree. I was called for apostasy, and then I was charged with heresy. So do you know the difference between apostasy and heresy?
Well, carry on. Explain to us your reasoning.
Well, so that's my reasoning. That's my first step. My first point. Second point is, you know, that's I don't think like apostasy was proven to me then. But basically, that's my point. So, what? In other words, what have I done? I deserve death.
Death has not been mentioned.
Well, but that's if we were in Israel, you would kill me.
We're not in Israel.
But if we were, spiritually, you're sentencing me to death. If I am disfellowship, I'm death. Up on Armageddon, I'm dead. So you're sentencing me to death. So my question is, what have I done? I deserve to die. It's a simple question, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I don't feel this question was answered.
So when we go back to the things that they mentioned to you,
mm-hmm.
What was your feeling? Why do you not feel that was apostasy?
Because it wasn't. What's apostasy is abandoning God. My faith was never stronger before, as strong as it is now. So I am not an apostate. I believe in Jesus Christ, in Jehovah God.
And the word apostasy means standing aside from the truth.
Where is that definition coming from?
Well, it's standing aside anyway. That's the word.
Apostate is basically a slave that fled, right? Ran away, right? And in the context, in the Bible, it's used to people who are who left God, abandoned of the faith.
But many in Israel who did.
Mm-hmm. But we're not in Israel.
Yes.
You mentioned that, yeah, because you still didn't answer my question.
So lots of those that had that problem, we talk about the congregation in Corinth, they did not abandon God. They still believed in God.
Right.
But they spoke of them as those that were teaching that the resurrection had already happened, or were not accepting the ones coming from the apostles. They still believed in God.
Yes.
So
I'm not getting your point.
the scriptures still paint them in a bad light.
Show me that in the Bible. I'm sorry, but I'm not aware of such a verse.
1 Corinthians 15:33.
Okay. Second say. 1 Corinthians 15. What is the verse?
33.
33, right. Right, okay. Bad association spoils useful habits.
And the context?
From where you would like to start?
Well, we've all been students of the Bible. We know that this is talking about denying the resurrection.
Yes, so I'm not denying the resurrection. Yeah, and by the way, if you refer to Greek, if you've got the Watchtower Library, just check this verse in Greek because it's really mistranslated. So it's not bad association; it's bad talks. Spoil good habits, right? Not bad association, bad talks. So this is a big difference here. That's in Greek, at least in Greek.
So the brothers have told us that some of the issues that have come up has been the question of whether this is Jehovah's organization.
I did not refer like that. I mentioned something different. But yeah, keep going. Oh no.
So we're interested in what you think. So do you believe this is
right? So I prepared a few verses as well for today, right? So basically, just when we got to this point, let's maybe go through my thinking process, right? So you understand better. Sorry, I'm looking at this brother because he's talking to me.
Yeah.
Right. So. Right. I'm really grateful you mentioned the context, because last time I spoke to the brothers and they refused to read in context, which really changed the meaning of the verses they read. So I'm glad at least we are on this page here. So if you read Romans 14:1, right, it says, "Welcome the man having weaknesses in his faith, but do not pass judgment on differing opinions." Right? So my opinions were different, and I was subject to the judgment that was executed on me during my judicial committee, the first one. And so what is the basis for the judgment then? Because I don't understand it. That's why I disagree with the whole process, It's... You read me like a verse about bad association, but certainly I am not a bad association, because if you read the context, it was not about having different opinions, right? In that verse, and it's not bad association, but bad talks, right? I'm not talking badly about anyone, about anything, so it's not applying to me, And then, upon my arrival, I was read James 5:14. "Is there anyone sick among you? Let him call the elders of the congregation to him, and let them pray over him, apply oil to him in the name of Jehovah, and the prayer of faith will make the sick one well, and Jehovah will raise him up. Also, if he has committed sins, he will be forgiven. Right? It's a pretty simple instruction. So that was read to me in the beginning, and I did not call the elders. They called me. I wasn't called for this judicial, that one. Neither this one, as this is a consequence of the previous meeting. Brothers did not pray over me. There was no oil, however you can imagine that. And that made me feel worse than before. I didn't feel healed. So it's not working, or it was misapplied, or was actually not applied at all. So if you look at it in the context, with the context of Romans 14:1, where it says, "Welcome the man having weaknesses in his faith, but do not pass judgment on differing opinions."
So we're not going to enter into any debates about individual verses. We want to know.
Well, you're using the verses, so I'm replying with other verses, because if you pick verses that are showing one side of the story, then you cannot ignore the other side of the story, because the Bible is balanced. You can't just pick one side and just ignore everything else that is left.
Could I just make a little comment? So you're talking about verses out of context.
Yes.
So let me just ask a simple question. When you were asked at what you've called a judicial meeting,
Yes.
was that the only conversation these brothers had with you? Did
They had two more conversations with me.
Only two?
Well, including a few phone calls where they were actually discussing the judicial committee arrangement.
But before that, forget the judicial. Have you ever received any conversations with these brothers who tried to help you before it became a judicial?
I cannot recall that. If brothers remember, that's fine, but they can remind me, but I can't recall that.
So, you've said to us not to take verses out of context. There are other verses in the scriptures that talk about the disfellowshipping arrangement.
Can we read them?
We can read as many as you want, but
Okay.
we have to consider the context of each of
Yes,
them.
I'm very happy.
So there is a time for helping a person with doubts,
Right.
and that's the time for shepherding visits. There's also a time.
Sorry, give me a second.
Yeah, so just a simple point that you've selected one verse. I can see some copies of some old Watchtowers on the back as well. So you're obviously picking up information from others. So you've got some verses that don't take it out of context.
Yes.
That verse is not talking about a judicial arrangement. It's talking about the need to shepherd. There are other verses in their context that talk about the need for a more serious action. And the scriptures talk about.
Well, can we read those verses?
In 1 Corinthians, you know them very well. We're not spending.
So I've got this. That's a week from 1947, January 8, right? I don't know. Are you familiar with this?
I don't know which one it is, but I recognise the print.
Yeah. So actually, it is written here that disfellowshipping is not a Christian practice, and it's foreign to the Bible. I've spent last 2 years on studying the history of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, of Brother Russell, Brother Rutherford, and all the brothers I could find information about.
But if I might say respectfully, that's still in its infancy, just 2 years. I think the brothers here collectively have got several decades more. So all I'm saying to you, brother, is there are some verses. You've picked one that's talking about shepherding.
Can we read them?
Let me finish the point. No, it's the one you just read. But you are applying it to a judicial arrangement. It's not talking about that. It's talking about shepherding.
That's okay.
Okay?
Right.
So don't take it out of context. That's all we're saying.
That's okay.
We're happy to listen to.
But as you know, I am here because I'm appealing my disfellowshipping.
So that's why our dear brother here is just asking you, on what basis, please?
On what basis? What
are you appealing? What is it?
Because I disagree with the fact that apostasy was not proven to me, in the sense of apostasy. I've just read you that I should not be judged upon different opinions, right? That way. And do you think I deserve to die for this? That I have a different opinion on something. You believe so? You're nodding yes. I'm
listening to what you're saying.
Right. So, but you're not answering my question. I'm asking you, do you believe I should die for...
I think our chairman has already said that that's not the case. So
but this is essentially what's happening. I was actually sentenced to death by his brothers here.
You don't want to use language.
But this is, well, you believe that people who are outside of the congregation, they will die in Armageddon, will they?
We do our best to help ones come back, and that will be done with you as well.
Right, but okay, so let's go back to the beginning. If I believe, right? If I believe that I'm gonna save your life, and I found you in my situation, and me in your situation, if I were you, basically, I would go to a person who needs help, and maybe they disagree with something, and I would say, okay, the truth will explain itself. So let's study together, and I will show you, I will prove you are wrong, because I've got a very scientific mind, and I'm not afraid of saying that I was wrong on something. Mm-hmm. So, if the evidence is there, you can discuss with evidence. But do you know this? What does the Bible teach? The yellow book we used to use for study the Bible with students, right? There is an illustration of a teacher who is challenged by a student, and she tells the student to leave, right? Do you remember the context of it, right? It was actually a context. The context was saying that the explanation was that we should not treat people like that that's why Jehovah did not kick out Satan right away. He gave him some time to prove himself.
And that's the opportunity we want to give you this evening.
Yeah, but I don't think I can explain everything in 1 or 2 hours. But basically I was kicked out from the class. So basically you're bringing me back, saying...
Do you want to be in the class?
On which class? I mean, at the moment, I've got even more concerns how I've been treated, right? And basically, I don't think I should be kicked out in the first place. You can't just. Do you have a wife? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you beat your wife and just kick her out from home, and they just call her back next day. And she will be, and you will say, I'm sorry, but do you want to live with me? So do you think she will have the same attitude? Say, of course I wanted to live with you all the time. Never happened. No, something would change, something would break. Like a line of trust would snap. And this is what happened to me. Right?
So... you feel you've lost trust in this organization that is Jehovah's Witnesses?
Well, I've been studying the Bible, and I've noticed some teachings are not according to the Bible, and and I feel like you should follow the Bible. Do you agree? Well, the Bible is more important than teachings.
So, Jehovah said that he would establish a faithful and discreet slave that would give the food at the proper time. That was the channel he used. Even the Apostle
What is
Paul,
the proof of that? Can you prove me?
Well, that's what
this is the channel, because there's no proof. I mean, when Jesus came, there was the heaven opened. There was so many prophecies fulfilled on Jesus, but now. How can you prove when did this channel start? This is the main question.
Let's take it from a different other approach.
Yeah.
If it isn't Jehovah's Witnesses, who is it? Who is teaching?
Jesus Christ.
No, that's our leader. Which
Yeah.
people on earth is Jehovah using today to accomplish his work? If it's not Jehovah's Witnesses, who is it?
So you're saying the Jehovah is using Anthony Morris, Samuel Hurd, just 8 people in America.
Not as individuals, but as a composite group.
Okay, so where did you get it in the Bible? Because it's not supported by the Bible, this teaching.
I wonder if I might just go back a bit further. So you believe that Jesus is God's son?
Wholeheartedly, yes.
You believe he came to the earth and died for us?
Yes.
Right. So that's nice. I
believe in that.
We agree in all of those. Do you acknowledge what he said to his 11 faithful apostles? What he said when he used the words, "I make a covenant with you, just as my Father made a covenant with me for a kingdom."
Yes.
Included amongst those, Peter.
Yes.
James, John.
Yes.
With their imperfections. And they're recorded in the scriptures.
Yes.
Do you believe that on their death, that they would be resurrected to rule in heaven with Jesus?
Yes.
Right. You've mentioned Russell.
Yes.
You quoted his words as if you put more credence on them than others. So would you say that at the time of Brother Russell, that he had Jehovah's blessing?
I don't know.
No.
No, I'm not saying no. I mean, it might have had blessing. It might have lost it. I don't know. You know, he tried his best. I cannot judge him. You know, how can I judge Brother Russell?
No, exactly. But in a sense, you're judging others, though. So I'm just wondering.
Whom?
You mentioned some by name, the current members of the government.
I'm not judging them. I've not made any judgment.
Well, you're doubting their role.
That's not a judgment. That's following the Bible.
All right, an evaluation.
It's not an evaluation. I'm just saying that this teaching is not supported by the Bible. That's it. So
the point
if I say like the Pope is not God's representative because the Bible does not support the Pope, right? I'm not judging the Pope. I'm just saying the fact. It's a factual thing from the Bible. It's not a judgment.
Trying to establish some common ground to wonder when Revelation talks about the first century Christian congregations and the stars were in Jesus' hand. So Jesus in heaven, arranging affairs on the earth in the various congregations. You accept the accounts in Revelation, those 2 chapters?
Whether I understand them properly, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's been changed. I mean, even the book of the climax of the climax book is not even mentioned. So I guess the teachings
not talking
will
about
be
the climax
different.
book, just talking about the books.
But that's written in symbols, right? So that will be subject to interpretation. So I'm not. I don't feel entitled to make those interpretations because that requires further studying.
Well, it's good to keep making these things firm in our own minds and hearts, isn't
it?
So
I'm familiar with it. Yes, but
good. So just trying to establish, you seem to have some doubts about the role of Jesus Christ in the first century. Accepted. No, just a minute. The first century, you accepted that he used those apostles, Spirit anointed, and in spite of their imperfections, he honoured them, and they formed in the first century a governing body that directed the work in the first century. It was also foretold that would be re-established in the time of the end. So I'm just trying to find out from you where you feel it's gone wrong in that line.
Okay. So what I would say is that the whole concept of 8 people ruling the whole organization and claiming they are the only channel of communication between God and people is not scriptural. In fact, I don't know, do you have maybe like a Greek dictionary at home?
I do, yes.
Yeah. So if you check the word Antichrist, right? Do you know who Antichrist is?
Will you tell me?
Yeah. So Antichrist is not someone who is against Christ. That's not the full definition of this word. An Antichrist is someone who puts themselves in place of Jesus Christ, right? So if you're a channel of communication, right? Another word, you're a medium, right? Medium is a channel of communication, right? Media. In other words, you are a mediator.
Still addressing the words through the chairman, if I may. I'm asking permission, but may I just continue this small point?
Yes. Yeah.
It's just a very simple, straightforward point. Just trying to find out where you're coming from. The apostles didn't appoint themselves.
No. But
the apostles were appointed by Jesus.
So who appointed?
Well, just a moment.
Okay, yeah, sure.
So it seems that someone earlier on, you're using quotes from earlier brothers who it seems you seem to respect. I don't know whether you
they were just people.
None of these brothers, the 8 that you'll mention, have appointed themselves.
Who appointed them?
Well, from the beginning.
Right.
The unit that was established at the time of Russell and others.
Okay, so let's go to the beginning.
Brother Knorr, Brother Franz, and all those others that most of the reading that maybe you've done, if others who have similar thoughts to yourself and shared these thoughts with you, they seem to respect earlier on, but sometimes they seem disgruntled more recently. So I'm just wondering where this body, who then appointed others, not they them appointed themselves.
So I don't have any problems with the first century people, right? But then we've got Brother Russell, who started a printing company, right? Really, right? He did not start a religion, like organized religion at Jehovah's Witnesses in the beginning, because it was a printing company, and it was associating different congregations, let's say. So like in Britain, it was a Bible Student Association, and there were others in America and all over the world, right? And there was no even Jehovah's Witnesses at that point. There were Bible students and so on, right? And then Brother Russell died, and Brother Rutherford became the president, right? So I don't know how much you know how Brother Rutherford became the president of the Watchtower. Do you know any details? How did that happen?
I probably know a lot more than you think I do, but
okay.
That's beside the point. But I've finished my...
No, that's important.
I've finished what I need to. I've heard... I just wanted to get some idea of how he feels about these things. I've heard enough. So back to our chairman.
Yeah. So I just wanted to clarify something there. You say that the word Antichrist means somebody puts themselves in the place of. So are you, in a way, saying that the governing body is an Antichrist because they're putting themselves in the place?
Well, they're grabbing more and more power, and this is when I have difficult to reconcile what the Bible says with what they do, because at the moment, they decide, they claim they can decide about everything, right? And you cannot really dispute what they say because you are disfellowshipped. That's my problem. That's why I'm sitting here, right? So
can we take a look at a scripture?
Yeah, but
just to show how Jehovah views these kind of things. You know the story.
Which verse is this?
In the book of Numbers, chapter 16.
So we'll be back to Israel.
It is part of the Bible.
It's quite convenient, you just go back and forth. Okay.
So do you not accept?
No, it's okay. Which one is it?
Hebrews 16.
Hebrews or?
Numbers 16.
Okay. 16, yes.
And there were some of the chieftains, Korah. And in verse 3, so they gathered together against Moses and Aaron and said to them, "We have had enough of you. The whole assembly is holy, all of them, and Jehovah is in their midst. Why then should you exalt yourself above the congregation of Jehovah?" What Korah and the 250 men said there, it was partly right. The whole assembly of Jehovah is holy.
Yeah.
Jehovah does give his spirit to the whole.
I don't dispute that. I agree with that, yes.
But they failed to recognize
They were put to death.
his appointment.
Yes.
They said, you are exalting yourself above.
Yeah, but do you see the difference between Moses, who was appointed by God directly, and Brother Rutherford, for example, who was not appointed by God? If he was appointed by God, then where does it say he was? If you show me that, I will, honestly, I can put just on my knees and say I'm sorry. But that's not in the Bible.
Well, we've only got Moses' word for it.
Yes.
That Moses was appointed by God.
Correct.
He was the only witness of the burning bush. What he accomplished during his lifetime.
Excuse me, but Jehovah was proving that he's appointed by, just given different miracles.
Exactly.
So, and there is no miracles given to Brother Rutherford. In fact, as his brother said, he knows, about Brother Rutherford, how he became the president, how he actually staged a coup to become one. And he kicked out brothers from Bethel, Brother Sturgeon, who meant to be his Brother Russell's successor, and actually they told him up on Russell's grave when they were giving talks during the funeral. They approached him and they say, "We expect you to resign." So this there's more to it, right? Like there's. Have you ever heard about All-in Moyle case? That's that's important because we need to establish something before we go further, because this is important. Have you, brother, heard about Brother All-in Moyle or Brother Fisher? Brother Fisher was actually in the publishing committee. He was kicked out as well because Rutherford, he wouldn't agree with Rutherford's, and basically they just kicked him out.
There was a lot of commotion at that time, yes. But what we're looking at here is, as you said, no one saw Moses' appointment.
But there were proofs of God. That's not. But this is a wrong claim, because after his appointment, Jehovah was showing proofs that he is appointed, right? Miracles.
That's what I'm getting to.
Yeah. Sorry.
So if I can finish. No one saw Moses at the burning bush.
Yes.
It had a deep effect on Moses.
Yes.
And he came away and he accomplished amazing things with Jehovah's power.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have miracles today of that time. But
correct.
What has been accomplished by Jehovah's organization, by the people that he has appointed,
such as
protecting us from this COVID is just one recent example.
Right. Okay. That's a wrong example, right? If we meet here in 6 months, they will be telling something completely different, right? This is one of the things, right? I will tell you, because brothers, they are pushing those vaccines to the people. I'm not anti-vax at all, right? But there is more and more evidence coming that the vaccine is actually causing more harm than good. And everybody is vaccinated. And I know brothers from my home congregation who died after the vaccine. And actually, I know more who died from the vaccine, from blood clots, than actually who died from COVID.
Well, okay. We're not going to get into the science of all
that. Yeah, that's one thing.
Translational work.
Mormons, they're double the numbers. Then the fastest growing church is Pentecostal church. Muslims, right? This is I think the largest religion in numbers in the whole world. It's not the fastest growing, but the largest. So that's not a sign of God's approval, because you can point to absolutely any other group.
I'm sure we would
and you can find those, right?
I'm sure we would be if we let some of our standards down that.
But we're not talking about the Bible, brothers. I can discuss things, right? I went through that, but I am interested in Bible proofs. You cannot say, oh well, So look what we accomplished, like Burj Khalifa. That's the tallest building. Does it prove that Islam is a true religion? No. They have the biggest temples. Does it mean it's a true religion? So these are just surrogate measures you're just creating here. I'm sorry.
So we come back to that original question.
Yeah.
If it isn't Jehovah's Witnesses, and you don't think Jehovah is using the governing body, that they are self-appointed, that they are putting themselves and grabbing power, who is?
Who is what?
Who is doing Jehovah's will on a...
Christians. You might be doing, I might be doing. You're just, Jesus said, where there's 2 or 3 gather in my name, I am among them, right? He never said there must be millions of you. So you can, this is your relation with Jesus Christ, and your relation, and their relation. So it's not, there's the word organization is not even mentioned. You have to be a part of an organization or follow any people, really.
Well, organization, it comes, as you probably know, is something, people that are brought together to do a work.
Yeah, I understand it, right? But then you've got, the governing body that transformed themselves from the governing body, which is a corporate term, to actually the governing body of the whole religion. Because in the beginning, that, like Brother Rutherford was the president of the Watchtower and Tract Society. It was not like the religion. He made Jehovah's Witnesses later, and that was like after 75% people left because he was a drunkard and were going to naked burlesques, right? And he had a really lavish life while people were living in poverty, right? So, and 75% people left, right? So, and that's a factual thing. It's not made up. Yeah, I've got court transcripts for that, where actually people won money. Like Brother All in Moyle, actually, he was granted a lot of money for the treatment he got from Brother Rutherford. So I'm sorry, but for me, it's just difficult to understand that Jesus comes to the earth and he appoints Brother Rutherford, knowing his lifestyle, right, and selects him as the most righteous person.
I was just wondering,
on the earth.
Would you mind going into the second room for a few minutes while we just have a chat and see how we are at the moment?
Right.
You used to reason a lot with people who you would call apostates.
Yes.
How did you feel at that time?
I'm sorry, I reasoned with people?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct. I
I
don't like apostates. I don't like lies. I really detest lies. So, if somebody was telling lies, I was fact-checking it, and if it's a lie, it's a lie. If it's the truth, it's the truth. This is my reasoning, and I don't fancy criticizing the society, the brothers, for something that hasn't happened, never happened. But what bothers me really is whitewashing, for example, the history, right? Like, for example, at the convention, we had this video like brothers in 1975 where actually blamed that, and it was told that this is their fault. They were waiting for 1975, right? In fact, it wasn't, because if you look to the magazines and from 60, 64, 68, there was a lot of things mentioned about the end. It was actually said that you'll probably not even finish your education, so you shouldn't really finish your education because 1975 is behind the corner, you know. And it was exactly the same situation as with the vaccines. It was not really anywhere officially written in the literature, but the whole job was done by circuit overseers and during convention talks. It's the same. It's really the same modus operandi now. So things like that, right? Because, you know, this is, you know, and the situation how we were treated as well by Polish Bethel, that really was a big eye opener for us. You know, like I guess you are not familiar with the case. Were you told what happened?
Yeah, they put us into the picture that.
Yeah, so you know, it's just a lot of little things, you know, and you know, if someone makes a mistake, they should be able to say, "Sorry, we were wrong." You know, but in fact, people were disfellowshipped or died for not following certain or for following certain teachings, like for example, you know, blood fraction transfusions. They were not allowed in the first place. Now they are allowed. So people who took blood fractions before that they died, right? Or organ transplant in 80s, before 80s, they would die, you know? So today you would die, and tomorrow there will be a new watchtower saying you can have a new liver if you want. But you're dead. And nobody said heavens, they are sorry. So does this prove you they speak from God?
But our organization is based on the fact that we start off.
No. The governing body, sorry, but you're missing my point. The governing body claims they are the only channel of communication. In fact, they're not, because, you know, during the Australian Royal Commission, Brother Jeffrey Jackson mentioned they are not the only channel of communication. He was asked this question. Are you familiar with Australian Royal Commission?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I even think... that's important. Listen, that's important. It's about my life, really, so,
yeah.
You know, unless you think my life is not important.
It's sticking on to one topic and then moving on to the next. That's what we're trying to do.
Okay, right. Sorry.
So we can come to that in a minute.
Yeah, sure. I will search for the note. Oh, here, I got it.
So when you were talking to those that were telling lies about Jehovah's Witnesses in the past, how did you feel about those ones? Do you think what they said could have influenced you?
No, I don't think so, because there were things of a different nature. So I don't think that influenced me at all. And my position at the moment is from my very diligent Bible study and from what I observe. And what literally, you know, you've got Watchtowers, the one of the recent ones, when there is a topic about disfellowshipping, right? And it says, who was it? Was it Ahab? Did not show repentance? Was it? And the very next verse actually says Jehovah forgave him and sent prophet. And it says he did not show enough repentance. So how can you say that someone did not show enough repentance? Are you the judge of that person? You're not. So we cannot make those claims because they are probably, plainly not scriptural. And this is my problem. You know, I don't have any problem with the organization as long as they don't violate the Bible. So basically, I am disfellowship for adhering to the Bible, right? And if you are not adhering to the Bible, you can prove it probably. I don't think it's very complicated.
So where do you find that they are not adhering to the Bible?
Where? In the Bible.
No. Okay.
And in the Watchtower. That's the probably the worst part. You can read the Watchtower. I argue, right? I can encourage you, read the verses. Next time you prepare for the Watchtower, read the verses with the context.
Yes.
But read them with the context, honestly, from the Bible.
It is important to do that.
And this is what I do, yes.
Read it within the context of, and we're encouraged to do that as Jehovah's Witnesses, to read within the context of the chapter, but also within the context of the whole of God's Word. and see what the whole focus of God's word is. And then read. So specifically, you were saying that there are some lies that Jehovah's Witnesses are teaching that are wrong.
Okay. Let's say, let's don't look far. The overlapping generation, that does it make any sense to you? Have you ever seen, if I show you a picture of royal family, the queen, her late husband, and all the children, all the grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and I say, this is the one generation. Would you believe that? Does it look to you like a generation?
So what you're saying is you don't believe that?
No, I'm saying that there's a lot of nonsense there. Basically, straightforward. We can just call it by its name. It's just nonsense.
So what does it mean?
I don't know. It's just, but I can tell you that this is nonsense. I don't have to, to say that. I don't have to give an alternative. If I can say that this is nonsense, basically, and this is basically what happens is just they keep changing this teaching, right? So first of all, people who've seen 1970, 1914 would never die, right? Do you remember this Watchtower Hold the Faces? Right, they're all dead now. Right? So
what we're trying to say is, what is the alternative?
To
if
what?
If it's not,
Jesus is the alternative. There's no alternative other than Jesus. The Bible, you've got the Bible, you've got Jesus Christ, who's the head of the congregation. Right?
So do Jehovah's Witnesses stand out as different from the other religions, or are there good people in all religions?
Sorry, but you just don't understand my point.
Okay.
Yeah, why are you mentioning about religion? A religion is an organized form of faith.
Yes.
So you are not, unless you were born in Israel and you were just by the right of the land or being born as a Jew, you were covered by the covenant. And Christians, this is just personal relationship with Jesus Christ. So you cannot become a Christ follower by joining any organization. You have to accept, right, Jesus as your savior, correct?
Mm-hmm.
This is what you have to accept. You don't have to sign for any organization. So I'm not comparing any other organizations, because I believe, like all the other religions, all organized forms of faith are false religions by definition.
How can we have unity then amongst Christ's followers? Because Jesus said that there would be, or rather Paul said that there would be one faith, one baptism.
Correct. One faith, yeah. So Jesus says, I am the way. Right? So if you follow Jesus, and I follow Jesus, and brothers follow Jesus, so we will go to the same place, because Jesus isn't, you can't just end up in different places if you follow one person.
But your reading of the Bible will come to one understanding.
No.
I'll read it in one way.
So we can discuss. That's the problem, because, if I want to discuss something, I can invite you over to my house, we can discuss, and I can convince you, or you can convince me. But your approach is, not your personal, right, but the body you're presenting. I don't want to judge you. I'm not sure what your approach is. So the approach is that if you have any difference of opinion, you are just kicked out, right? And everybody else is told not to speak to you, or they will be disfellowshipped as well. So this is the approach. So you've got this example from the book, What Does the Bible Teach in Real Life?
That is not a good representation of what is.
I believe it is, I'm afraid.
Jude said that if somebody is having doubts, catch hold of them and pull them out of the fire.
Yeah, that's my approach. I'm totally supporting this approach. If someone has problems, you can convince that person. Because, if you take the Bible, and honestly, the Bible is simple, it's written for simple people, and it's simple to reason. So I rather would spend some time and convince a person that this is what the real teaching is in the Bible than just kick him out, as you're doing now.
So, in your view of how Christianity should be,
yes,
we as individuals...
That's not my view, that's the biblical view. Sorry.
Okay.
We
as individuals would have our relationship with Jesus and we follow Jesus.
Yes.
Well, why all the counsel about sects and divisions?
Correct. And if you
why were the early Christians arranged into congregations?
I can answer you this question. If you read actually this verse about the divisions and sects, right? It says in the context it's actually referring to the Jews. And it's mentioned among all the flesh things. It was based on the fleshly behavior, actually. When you demonstrate fleshly behavior, So these are the sects. But it's not about misunderstandings or... Because do you believe in the first century Corinthians had better understanding than Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, or even Catholic Church? Nowadays, they didn't. Like Paul was explaining simple things. They did not understand a lot. In fact, for many of the congregations, which were consisted of people who Christianity was foreign or Jewish religion was foreign to them, it was something completely, new, right? So they had very little understanding. That's why I think, my opinion is that the Bible, it should be the way. And if there is, if you meet with another person, there's two enough. So Jesus is among you, and you have His Spirit, right? And then it's okay to meet with others Christians, because in fact we've got examples in the Bible where the Christians were meeting for worshiping together, But again, it was not like an organization. There was nowhere like they were building kingdom halls or doing different things, I'm sorry, I'm exaggerating, but you get the point.
There was not the structure that is needed today. That they didn't have that then, but they did have a structure. They were able to move funds from one part of the world to another when there was a famine. They had that structure. They were able to send out letters to all the congregations.
You don't need a structure to send a letter. If you actually read the first, any actually papers, documents, books about the first century Christianity, those letters were circulating between congregations, really, So even Paul wrote it to Corinthians or to Romans. As they were traveling from one place to another, they were taking those letters, reading, because, they were beneficial for them. So, but you don't need an organization for that. I can send a letter to you, and I don't need to set up an organization for this.
No, but the governing body of that time, the elders in Jerusalem and the apostles, they sent out a letter on the circumcision issue that went out to all the
read it in the context, please. So again, I've been discussing this with brothers, and it was about the context. The issue is that there were Jews in Achaia. It was Achaia thing, which is like Asia Minor. And they came from Jerusalem, and they were telling all the congregation on the way that they have to circumcise, right? So I will repeat myself, but if I come to you nowadays and I would say, brothers, you have to circumcise or whatever, you can't wear ties or something, and I came from Warwick, right? What you would do, you just say, I have to call Warwick and just confirm it, because that's bizarre what he's saying. So, and this is exactly what happened. Brothers were sent from the congregation to Jerusalem to find out, hey, listen, is this what you actually were saying? Because, and then they came back the same route through all the congregations, only to that direction to Achaia, and just explain that this is the arrangement of circumcision. So basically they were talking rubbish, those previous Jews. You don't have to circumcise. But that was never mentioned in any other directions. That is the story behind it. And in fact, apart from that, the governing body is never mentioned as a council, like a formal council over the whole Christianity, never mentioned again. In fact, I think it was good, 7 or even more than 10 years when Paul came back to Jerusalem. He was not really interested in coming back to Jerusalem. And, when the apostasy, so-called, started in the 1st century, there were popes, they were forming popes. The 2nd century, became, the bishops became forming the clergy class. You have no trace of any dispute with anything like governing body in the sources, historical sources. Because surely if there was one, in the understanding we currently have as an equivalent of the governing body as in our religion, there would be something mentioned, and there is nothing. It's completely quiet. So we mentioned once in the Bible, then not even once again. No historical sources mentioning this.
I mean, there are other references, like when Paul came back after he'd been to Damascus.
Yes, and he didn't even meet with everybody.
He said, I didn't meet with the apostles as a group. So he's
apostles, yes.
So
the apostles
we're not going to argue about words that are used. We're talking about a group of men who were organizing.
That's important. But you're trying to read. It's called eisegesis. So basically, if you try to read something into the Bible that is not there, it's called eisegesis, right? It's not. It's completely opposite to exegesis, where you actually read the Bible and conclude from the Bible. But actually now you're putting ideas to the Bible that are not there.
So it always comes back to the point here that you are asking not to be thrown out of an organization you don't believe exists.
I don't agree to be disfellowshipped. I can agree voluntarily not to come here, if that's your will. But to me, and I mentioned that the disfellowshipping is basically it's like a kangaroo court, right? It's actually mentioned once in the Bible, and this is when Jesus was put in front of the Sanhedrin, right? It was at night, similar to me. It was probably more than there is you here. And no witnesses.
Okay.
Right? So that's the only reference in the Bible. I'm sorry, but this is how I look at it.
Right.
And there's nowhere in the Bible say that if someone disagree with your view, you are not allowed to speak to them, or you will be disfellowship as well.
So talking then about that idea of disfellowshipping, when Paul mentions in the Corinthian congregation about the man who was sleeping with...
I was not sleeping with anyone.
No.
So that was the case.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So was that right then for him to be disfellowshipped?
He was not disfellowshipped. No. If you read, actually, it says what?
To remove the wicked man from among you.
Yeah, to remove. And then what is mentioned later?
Several months later, there was to reinstate him.
No, not to reinstate, right?
To confirm your love for him.
Yes. So basically, don't be too harsh to him, right?
And why?
And what do you mean why? He was doing something that was so appalling that even people from outside of the congregation, right, who actually immoral. But even by their standards, it was something horrible.
Yeah.
So it was not something, minor. Having a disagreement with some opinions is not. you can't compare it to that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the principle of disfellowshipping here.
Yeah, but you're just building case on something that is not mentioned there, because they were not barred from speaking to that person. So can you see the difference?
So what did Paul mean when he said, "Remove the wicked man from among you"?
Yes. So again,
and not. So to remove him, and that they would not inherit God's kingdom, those who practice such things. What did Paul mean when he said, "Remove the wicked man"?
basically, as is written in the New World Translation, is stop associating. And in fact, what it means, in other cases as well, because I think I've got this in verses. I made notes, so it's quicker. Right. For example, 1 Corinthians 5:11, it says, "But now I'm writing you to stop keeping company with anyone called a brother who's sexually immoral." That was his case. Or a greedy person, or an idolater, or a reviler, or a drunkard, or extortioner, not even eating with such a man. Right? Mm-hmm. Does anything apply to me from those things?
Well, just the principle of disfellowshipping.
Yeah. So, hold on. So actually, keeping company, if you look into the Greek translation, in the interlinear, it means, the word that is used there actually means to keep intimate contact with a person. So as Christian tradition was, that they were meeting at homes, and you can read in the book of Acts, they were meeting for, gathering for meals together, so they were very intimate, right? Mm-hmm. So this is actually what it means. Don't eat even with them, right? Which is actually this intimate contact. And actually they were supposed to be for the Christians like tax collectors. Did they speak to tax collectors? They did. It's not like, because what happened in our religion, if you're a disfellowship, people are just basically fearing of you. If you walk, they just walk to the other side. And many are basically don't speak to you because they are afraid of being disfellowshipped, right? And then you've got those videos at the conventions where there's a daughter calling her mother and she rejects the call, right? Maybe she needed help. Maybe she had some kind of emergency. Would you do it to your child? Because I wouldn't. I wouldn't even do it to you, and I wouldn't even do it to anyone who I know. And I don't go on very well. But if someone calls me, I will at least answer, and I will ask what's going on, right? And this is the example that it's said to all the Jehovah's Witnesses just to reject call and basically cancel those people. That's not right.
Yeah. So just to clarify, because I think you were asked quite a simple question, but from what you've said, it seems like you do not agree with the principle of disfellowshipping. Correct.
Yes, I mentioned that during our
meeting. To hear it plainly from you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So this is what I don't agree with, and actually, this is the worst teaching that is taught by the governing body, and actually, they are more and more harsh on this.
Right.
So in that case then, it seems to me, just going back to something even more basic than that, but you were baptized, weren't you?
I was, yes.
Okay. And at the time of your baptism, you would have given a verbal agreement in answer to two questions.
Correct.
And the first one was, have you repented of your sins?
Correct.
Dedicated yourself to Jehovah, which is the point you made earlier.
Correct.
And accepted his way of salvation through Jesus Christ. And
I can't remember exactly that. So it was 1998.
So that was one of the questions. Now the other question.
Yes.
Do you understand that your baptism identifies you as one of Jehovah's Witnesses in association with Jehovah's organization?
Probably that was that question.
There would have been, yes.
Yes. So
have you changed your mind since then?
The organization has changed.
No, have you changed your mind about...
No, hold on. I agreed to that, to what I knew at the time, right? Because the book I studied was the knowledge book, right? And I've actually checked in the book of knowledge, the knowledge book. There is only literally 1 or 2 sentences about, for example, the governing body, right? And there is nothing about disfellowshipping. So you're basically prepared for the baptism, and you don't know all the facts.
So what you're saying now is you don't agree with that second point.
It's not scriptural. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes or
I mean,
no?
I go by the Bible.
Okay.
And if something is not by the Bible, I think I've got every right to dispute it.
So you no longer feel that you would answer yes to that question now?
Now, you mean?
Yes, no. If you were asked that question now, would you say yes or no?
No, I don't think I
Okay.
would say yes.
And one example of that is you don't agree with the stand on disfellowship.
I don't agree that my position is this is not scriptural. I don't agree with anything that is not scriptural.
So why are you fighting to stay in an organisation that you don't feel strong an attachment to?
Right, because if I get this fellowship, right, I'll be subject to all the treatment that these fellowshipping people get. These fellowship people get. Like, I will not be allowed. Well, others will not be allowed to speak to me. Or they'll be actually risking being disfellowshipped, which is foreign to the Bible, right? And I think that my wife is going to take a toll of that. She's in fact now depressed now from the contacts with the Bethel, and my son, he is depressed because of that, of the last. The 2 conversations I had with the last judicial committee, he started talking about suicide. So this is my point. So that's my position. I just don't think this is right because it's evil.
And could you consider that perhaps your own stand might have contributed to that as well?
Going by the Bible?
No, but this. If you don't mind me saying, you do like to argue a point, and it can be quite tedious. We're very pleased to listen to you, but the whole manner is not the way that we imagine Jesus talking, and in fact, it's not the way these brothers that you are criticising, the brothers of the governing body, it's not the way they can conduct themselves.
The truth does not come from nice speech, pleasant speech. It's actually something that is verifiable. And I'm a bit agitated because, I appreciate you actually left your families and came here. I left my family and had to come here. And I went through several hours of conversation similar to this, and it's not pleasant. I know I set the tone. I mean, maybe, or on the more, I would say, charging side, attacking, right? But this is basically this is my experience. It did not come from nowhere. So this is actually, that was the tone that was set as a result of those previous conversations.
I hope you...
Because the brothers called me and they behaved like they are friends, and all it was just in fact turned into interrogation. So by the extent of that, I kind of expected something similar from your side. So hence my approach.
But if we might say it's not just the manner, but the content of what you're saying as well.
What is the content? What is wrong with the content?
Are just a couple of things that you've now said. We just want to clarify how you feel.
Okay.
And you made it quite obvious. You made a specific comment about you don't agree with the disfellowshipping policy, and you've also said that you would not now answer yes to that question about recognising your part.
Would you?
Would I what?
Would you answer yes?
Would I
again?
answer that? I would, absolutely.
Yeah.
And just to put it in context, you mentioned the knowledge book. I took those vows in the Let God Be True book back in 1959. The organisation has made lots of changes since then.
Correct.
And it's really humbling, I think, on my part, that to me, that as I view what the organisational changes have been.
Well,
I'm delighted that I see every evidence that this is Jehovah's organisation.
right, such as
in the hands of his Son, Jesus Christ. And
who is replaced by the governing body at the moment? This is how I look at it.
Sorry?
Who is replaced by the governing body?
Who's replaced?
Jesus.
No, he uses, because he's in heaven
Okay.
and we're on the earth, all his faithful servants who want to serve him, who were baptized like you were, who were willing to take on the name Jehovah's Witnesses, are happy to be part of this organisation. So I'm responding to your question. Would
Yeah.
I answer yes to those two questions? Yes, I would, wholeheartedly.
Well, I appreciate that, but I done very extensive research, studied the Bible, and there are things that are simply not scriptural.
Right. So you've explained your feelings and you made them quite obvious.
So these are not my feelings. I can prove it with the Bible. I mean, look, I read the verses, right? Like I shouldn't be judged. You only take into consideration one verse that is actually telling you to kick me out, right? It says, for example, 2 Corinthians 2:6-8, it says, this rebuke given by the majority is sufficient for such a man. Now you should instead kindly forgive and comfort him, so that he might not be overwhelmed by excessive sadness. Right? So where is this majority of rebuke of majority? Where is the congregation involved? It's not.
So what's the context of that verse compared with 1 Corinthians 5 and 6, in which they were telling him to...
Yeah, well, I'm pointing your attention to actually the process, because you're using those examples to justify the process, but there is more to it. Like there are congregations.
Well, there was more to that, because he was repentant and he was reestablished.
Yeah, but again, that was for something that was completely out of mind, even for people in Corinth.
Yeah, but you're saying the process is wrong.
Yeah, so I mean, even if in such a case, it says the rebuke given by the majority. I mean, if you have a judicial committee, right, you make a decision, and I might be disfellowship for alcoholism, for anything, whatever. Nobody else is going to know what happened to me, right? Why I'm disfellowship, right? You only announce it, and everyone has to agree with it.
So you think they didn't know in the first century what the man was disfellowship for?
Probably they knew.
Well, do you think there's any way they couldn't have known?
As far as I know, all the letters were read in public. There were no secret letters. There were no secret messages.
Even before any letters, even if it was necessary for a letter, do you think they honestly didn't know he was living with his father?
I believe they knew.
They must have done.
Yeah, but then...
So he was disfellowshipped.
Yeah.
And then it seems within a year, but probably close to a year, he was reinstated.
That's not in the Bible. It says it says what I've just read.
Well, here's a little bit of homework for you then. See if you
No.
if you can find out how much time difference there was.
No, I'm not talking about the time. I'm talking about the process.
It's important about the process because you're linking two verses at two ends of the process.
So let's come back to actually the parable that Jesus said about the prodigal son.
Stop changing the subject. You brought up Corinthians. So let's
talk
about
but this is sorry. But I'm not talking about this. I'm not proving this. I'm not disputing the time. I'm disputing the manner, the whole process. If you actually follow, because it might have taken this month, maybe 6 months even to you get to a sense.
So sometime
right?
between
it doesn't mean like he stopped the next day and we'll see for 6 months what happens and then we start associating with him again. Right? That's never happened. But if you actually refer to what Jesus said about the prodigal son, the son was. He didn't even had to say he's sorry, right? There's no such a word from his mouth. He came back. He basically came to the bottom of his life situation, his life, and he ran out of money, and he came back, and he was actually welcomed by his father. And this is for Jesus, which is far superior to Paul said, because in fact, in Corinthians, you only read one side of the story, because you don't know what was the other side of the story. You only read a letter that is written by one person. We don't have the other part. So we only try to extrapolate the words and try to actually visualize the whole situation, you know. But this is what I'm saying. It's not about the time at all, and it's even the sin was a very gross sin, and it was a very huge misconduct, even by the Corinthians. Of standards.
So do you think he was still living with the woman when he came
No,
back in?
absolutely not.
So it must have taken some time.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. But now you're extrapolating his situation onto my situation, which, you know, I don't do something that people commonly think that is a sin. Studying the Bible is not a sin.
I think Robert's point was not that he's saying you have a lifestyle of that sort, but he's talking about the principle of disfellowshipping, and you say you don't agree with the principle of disfellowshipping.
Yes, but because that man was doing something that was, you know, you've got other examples here. There's a lot of verses mentioning different sins, you know, and it's nowhere repeated in the Bible. So it was like an extraordinary situation. You're trying to make a point from this extraordinary situation as it applies to every single case. And the Bible does not support it. And in fact, you know, I've shown you this awake from 1947, which says that this is foreign to the Bible. Yeah, you can check it if you like.
I've read it before and I don't need to read it again. Thank you.
Okay, so you read it and you're saying, okay, right. So, you know, it says that that's foreign into the Bible, right? This is from 1947, right? But then, you know, the situation, the approach of the society changed over time. So, for example, before 1975, they were more lenient to disfellowship people, and after 1975, they became harsh again. You know, because so many people left, and they just it's just a tool for controlling people. That's all it is. Because if you speak to people who are reinstated, and I spoke to a few, and they told me they only left because they only came back because nobody from their families would speak to them, and that's the pressure, and it's not really acting as a loving arrangement, because it is not. It's not from the Bible. It does not come from Jehovah, no Jesus. And you cannot present it as such. It's foreign to the Bible, you know. So how is that in 1947, it was foreign to the Bible, and then from 1952 it became actually a biblical scriptural teaching. So again, I encourage you to read the history of the Watchtower Society, because that explains, that gives you answer to this question.
Well, it's nice to hear your comments.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We could probably show you other articles similar, like Christmas. We've got photos of Christmas. The organisation prints pictures of the Bethel family celebrating Christmas. Why? Because our understanding has grown deeper. But
that's okay. I don't have any problems with that, but this is not going deeper. It's going actually away from the Bible.
So when Paul said then that a little leaven will spoil the whole lump.
Yes.
And then he says, take the wicked man out.
Yes.
Doesn't that all
So do you think I am a wicked man?
We're talking about the principle of disfellowship.
Yeah, it's okay, but you're saying that you're applying this extreme example, and you're trying to apply it to me. So I'm asking you, am I a wicked man? Am I a wicked person? So reading in the Bible, it makes me a wicked person. Who is a wicked person?
We're not saying that.
But this is, I know you're trying to actually bridge this verse to my situation, because we're discussing my situation. We're not discussing
What about then
somebody
the one
else.
in 2 John 10 where it says, if anyone comes to you and bring this teaching.
Okay, read 4 verses up. We'll tell you what teaching it is. That's actually a verse that Brothers to Refuse to read in context. if you read that, you will see this as the teaching that Jesus did not come in the flesh.
Oh, yes.
So I am not saying that. In fact, if I wanted to argue, that is Jehovah's Witnesses claim that Jesus did not come in flesh. That's parousia. But that's
Did not, past tense.
okay.
So Jesus came in the flesh.
Yeah.
When he was born.
So I'm not teaching that. So that in any shape or form it doesn't apply to me. I'm saying by this stretch, if you want to apply it, that could apply to parousia, saying that it did not come in flesh. But this verse is not applicable to me at all.
I think the point Robert's making, it seems that maybe we can help you understand the point. He's not saying that verse applies to you, and he's not saying when he talked about the sexually immoral people being disfellowship applies to you. That's not the point he's making.
Mm-hmm.
What he's saying is those verses talk about process of expelling a person, being removed from the congregation. Not that.
No, you're making this up. There's no process mentioned.
What would you say? Well, if someone's removed from the congregation, not even saying a greeting to someone, not eating with someone, removed.
No, associated closely, which means having intimate contact. That's your interpretation. No. That's the definition. If you read the definition, because you are refusing to read the definition, but I ask you, if you are home, when you're home, read the definition of this word, and you will find out this is actually the meaning. I spent, tons of hours on studying this.
You've answered Robert's question then. What you're saying is you don't think those verses support the process of disfellowshipping as currently practiced by Jehovah's Witnesses.
How can you make just one situation into a process? You cannot make a process of one situation where actually it's very explicit. It's said in the Bible for what things you can limit your association with people, right? Yeah. From intimate to just as you would have with your worldly neighbor.
So you're arguing that those verses do not support Jehovah's Witnesses' stand on disfellowshipping?
It's nowhere in the Bible this is a process, and it's applicable to everything else.
So
it says what it says.
So to clarify, Robert's not saying that's describing you. What he's saying is they're examples of where...
No, it said what it says. It says what it says. It says if someone that says Jesus did not come in flesh, right, if that person claims that...
Then what?
Then you can limit the association with those people.
So,
right?
So what
it doesn't say you cannot speak to them because you will be disfellowshipped. It's nowhere in the Bible. And you will have to... I don't know what to do. You have to add chapters to justify it because simply it's not there.
Now, I know you're saying those things to try and convince us that you're right, but on the other hand...
No, I'm not trying to convince you. I'm telling you what the Bible says.
You are explaining very clearly how you feel about it.
I'm explaining what the Bible says. So you are trying to put something into the Bible that is not there. And I'm just telling you that this is not there, and you cannot extend a verse and make it a principle. Because if you want to make it a principle, just adhere to what is written there. Because then you can just keep adding stuff and you can make rules of everything. Right? So you may just read about brides with lanterns or lamps, oil lamps, and they can say the principles. Every bride will have to have a lamp because it's written there. That was the case in the Bible. So you cannot make a principle out of one instance. Okay, if it's said, if someone believes that, right, it's clearly said, it's just a case. You cannot dispute it, but you cannot extend it to something else on other areas and make it like we can apply it to everything else because it was Paul said in that example, that very case, how we should behave. So this is my case. I'm not really teaching something like that Jesus did not come in flesh.
Yep, Simon. Can I just take you back to that question that David mentioned, the one that you said you can no longer say yes to?
Yes.
Do you understand that your baptism identifies you as one of Jehovah's Witnesses in association with Jehovah's organization?
Yes.
Okay. So you can no longer say yes to that.
That was my choice.
Yes.
So that was my choice to associate myself, that is my choice if I want to disassociate myself. That's my religion, my views is my personal matter.
Okay, but you also accept that Jehovah's organizations have a policy, a process,
yes,
of disfellowshipping,
which was not known to me at the point of my baptism.
You didn't know that when you were baptized?
I know when I was baptized, but if you actually check in the book Knowledge, this is not mentioned.
But
It's
you did
very
also
vague.
go through a series of questions with
Yes,
the
I did.
elders.
I did. And the whole process, it did not say if you disagree with our teaching, if they change in the future drastically, then you have to be disfellowship, because this is why I'm disputing. I'm not saying I'm disagreeing with everything, but since I got baptized, right? So this is actually a list of teachings that changed by year, right? So
This was 1998, did you say you were baptized?
yeah, I'm just going to that year. So from 1998, right? Look, you've got half a page. Second page is 1.5 to 3. That's what in total it's 3 pages.
You have also acknowledged, though, that during that time, your view of Jehovah's organization has changed. Because back then you were willing to say yes to that question. Now
Yes, I
you're
was
no
willing to
longer-
say yes, but
You are no longer willing to say
Well-
yes to that question.
well, in 1998, who was this faithful and discreet slave? They were all anointed brothers, right? That was the teaching, right? In 1998. And since that time, now it's been reduced to the governing body only, to 8 people. It's a drastic change, don't you feel it's a drastic change? Because basically, from following some sort of collective thinking, which was spread to other people, now you're following 8 people, and they tell you that you have to subject to everything they tell you, right? Even if this is like the most stupid, and you think like that's irrational, right? Like they say, you have to jump out from a building because we tell you so, and you have to follow them because they actually told you that you have to do it, even if it doesn't seem logical. This is the teaching. That is the current teaching of the governing body. Do you agree with that? If they tell you something that is completely bizarre, like so, because for example, I was told to follow. I was told to follow, for example, I don't know, Brother Morris, right? Who calls themselves the third. So he gave himself a regal number. And in fact, in every document, he's a junior, right? So if I come here and I call please, brothers, but call me Maciej II, you would say, he's out of his mind. He'd rather go to a specialist and see a specialist than to a judicial committee. So if a person behaves like that, I have every right to check if what they say is mentally right, and I should, at least every sound person on their mind would check if what they say is actually scriptural or makes sense and is logical. And what you're saying is, no, you have to follow them and just basically be totally submissive to what they say without giving a second thought, because this is what they say. You have to follow them, even if, from your point of view, it seems to be illogical.
No, I don't have to follow them. I have the...
Well, that would be a disfellowship.
I have the complete freedom of choice.
Well, so do I. But then I ended up here.
Express to us what your choice is. You
Yeah.
made that very clear, that you are not willing to accept the teachings of the faithful and the street.
Some teachings. I don't disagree with everything.
You specifically you do not agree with the principle of shunning or disfellowshipping.
Oh yeah, the shunning is very, very brutal. I don't agree with that. That does not come from the Bible. I agree with that. That is not from the Bible. So I'm not, so basically you're answering yes to this question, that basically if they tell you to do something stupid, like kill other people, you would do it without giving a second thought.
I didn't say that.
But this is your point. This is your standpoint. If you want to follow them as they demand, this is a part of it as well. You would have to do everything they tell you, isn't it? Well, it is. If you say no, that means you disagree with the governing body. So, for example, again, if they tell you, because I know brothers who were told to vaccinate, and they were like crazy, they wouldn't accept any vaccine, right? And once they heard that everybody should vaccinate, they all got vaccinated. So that's weak conscience, basically. So you make decision based on somebody else's decision. So it's not your decision. If I tell you to do something stupid or that's against your will or maybe your thoughts or your beliefs, would you do it? You wouldn't, because every normal person would say, hold on, let's think about it. Let's check the facts. And now you're not allowed to check the facts, because if you check the facts and the facts are against the demand from the governing body, then you automatically disagree with the governing body. And then you're subject to disfellowshipping, and you are called apostate, although you should be called heretic by the definition of the word. But this is the standpoint, and this is the standpoint I cannot accept, because they grab more and more power. Do you understand my point of view now?
I'm not in.
So that's hypotheticals.
Well, this is how you test the case. Take it to the extreme and see if it's logical. You don't have, if the case is not extreme, sometimes you can't find the logic, right? If you compare two tiny things that are like, just microns in dimension, it's difficult. But if you scale it up, you may see the difference is actually huge.
So I can, as a child, I would do everything my dad told me to do because he loved me and I trusted him.
Yes.
And if somebody came and said that my dad was really horrible and I should do this...
Yeah. But your dad would not give you a liver transplant if he was a Jehovah's Witness. Yeah. I would give to my son a liver transplant because the governing body told him not to give one. So it's actually a very good example. So in 1980, I was born in 1981, right? So look what happened. In 1980, in Britain, you were allowed to have liver transplant, organ transplant, basically. Prior to that, you would be disfellowshipped, right? In Poland, if I was born and I had in a family of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I had failure of my kidney or my liver or something, and I needed a transplant, I would die because the Watchtower in Polish came in 2 years later with an article explaining it, right? And that explains that you have to have a sound mind and be able to determine if something is sound or not.
So rather than grabbing power, what the governing body has realised through that period is that we exert our own conscience in a lot more areas. That's what you just told me.
Yeah, I don't understand what you're saying. Sorry.
So instead of trying to take control of every aspect of our lives, what the governing body has done is said, this is a conscience matter, you decide. So rather than...
If it's a conscience matter, it's not none of anybody's business.
Exactly, and that's what they're saying.
Yeah.
So it's your business, it's not us to decide that.
But it wasn't. And now they are actually going to the same teaching. If we tell you something that is bizarre from your point of view, and from, it's from any rationales.
So going back to my illustration, if my father who loves me, or if somebody said, would you do anything your father asked? Yes. Oh, but what if he told you to do that? Oh, but I know my father loves me. He would never ask me to do that.
Yes, but they are not your fathers. That's the difference. They are foreign people to you, and they don't even know of your existence.
It's still a matter of trust.
Okay. So this is what I'm saying again. Because this is my problem, really. So you've got, for example, Brother Let. who's investing in properties. At the same time, he tells the Bethelites to vow poverty, right? So you're basically living for, I don't know, $100 a month as a Bethelite. And for example, New Age, they decide that they don't need you anymore, and they dismiss you from Bethel, right? And you have to start your career from scratch with no savings, nothing, right? At the same time, he buys a house in Baldwin County in the U.S., right? For the house was for $500,000, and then he bought. I think a co-owner was his brother, right? So let's say $250,000, and this is for investment, And this is the guy who tells you the Armageddon is tomorrow, and you have to live in poverty and sell everything you have, and if you have any earnings, you have to give it to the society. And if you're a child, then you don't have to. You can't buy it. You should rather give a donation instead of buying yourself an ice cream.
Right.
And then you've got Anthony Morris, who calls himself the third. Well, he is a junior. And every document says he's a junior, and for us, Jehovah's Witnesses, he's the third. So that's another case. And and he buys, and you've got brothers in Russia who go to prison because the Watchtower does not want to pay for the lawyer, and they have the lawyers assigned. And I was personally sending money to brothers in Russia, do you know that? To prison, personally. From my account to their account in Russia, because there's no help from the organization. And hold on, and I'll tell you this. And he goes, brother who has a family, children, he went to prison for being a Jehovah's Witness in Russia, right? At the same time, brother Morris buys, crates of whiskey for $100 each, right? He spends like almost $1,000 in a shop like that.
You must have some very good CCTV cameras to know all this.
Well, you are not informed, that's it.
Well, let's go. I personally have signed that vow of poverty.
All right, okay. So how do you feel about it? I mean, look, I've actually downloaded for brother, because he said if you have intimate knowledge, so I downloaded from the Baldwin County the documents.
Can I explain what the vow of poverty is?
Yeah, you can, sure.
It's not saying that you shouldn't have any money. It's not holding all funds in common.
Yes.
When I signed it, I said today, if I needed something, I could take a day off work, and I could go and work for a friend and get money.
Providing the society agrees to that.
As long as I had taken the day off, it would be my money.
Yes, but you have to tell the society about it. If you tell something, just tell everything. Don't withhold information.
I didn't have to.
That's good. That's good for you. But they were brothers. I mean, the situation is different, And like, I don't know in Britain. I think it's the same as the US. But if you're in the US, you're left with nothing. I think Poland is the only country where Bethelites they were paid money, and they are treated exactly as the Catholic clergy. And if you leave Bethel, it goes towards your pension, and you will have some social care.
So going back to those points. So the vow of poverty is not to profit from being part of the organisation. It's not about getting money because you're a Jehovah's Witness. It's about we give of our time freely in whatever scope we're working in. But if we need money for whatever reason, we can earn some money and put it.
Right. So, okay, sorry, but maybe you've just signed it a long time ago. But when brothers were, you remember that was one of the broadcasts. I think it was 2015 when they were downsizing Bethel, right? So brothers in America, those who were actually dismissed from Bethel, they were actually they were told to leave. They had a letter reminding them that they cannot apply for any social care because no contributions were paid for them, right? And they were reassigned to full-time, to regular pioneering. So, and that's the case. And do you know how many brothers left there? Marriages broke because of that. This is and you never hear that. You never heed that.
Well,
So
I know quite a few who've done that, and I have done that myself.
right, okay, but
And
I
the
understand
thing
it.
is, we're taking Jehovah out of this. We believe firmly that Jehovah is our Father.
So he's selective then. Yes, because he did not help everybody. And I can tell you, right? I know a brother from Poland. I actually knew him personally, and he was treated like this as well. He was a gardener in Polish Bethel, right? Actually, he had means to live because he was quite wealthy. And he was in Bethel. He was kicked out because they sold the garden in Bethel, and bulldozers just whatever he was doing there, they just wiped it out. So he was.
Assure you that it doesn't
He was depressed, and because he was depressed, he was kicked out from Bethel, and he committed suicide. Marek Vira, you can check. Call Bethel, you can ask them, can tell you. So I'm not making things up. So and he was very devoted, right? But so apparently, and I can tell you from my story, from my experience with the Polish Bethel I had, they're not kind. It's only when it's towards Bethel, towards the organization. If you give money towards the organization, they're kind. But if you want something back, it's not nice. Really, really horrible. So this is my experience, and then having this experience, I started having doubts like, is this the organization of God? Would Jesus behave like this? So I started checking, the more I check, the more problems I find. That's my problem. And I think, yeah.
Anything else you would like to ask? No.
Not really, except that you've given several negative examples of things that have touched your heart, and we're really sorry to hear about anyone.
These are no.
No, just a minute.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear about anyone who's so depressed that they commit suicide. That's really something that's very sad, and we don't like to hear those things.
Yeah.
But if you are inclined to try and find negative examples of every situation, you will find them.
I'm not looking for negative examples, brother.
I'd love to just finish my point, if you don't mind. So it's not hard to do that. You'll often find any process that changes, the need to downsize Bethels. You'll find some find it very challenging. There's been several couples who have been asked to leave and have been reassigned, some as regular pioneers, some as special pioneers, other to different assignments. And some are affected by that, and some by their own admission, even though they later found their feet. It was a hard time to adjust.
Yes.
But you will, if you're inclined to, you can find disgruntled individuals, and you can select lots of negative examples. You can also find...
Answer me this question. Tell me, in your congregation... Sorry. Because I want to cut it short, honestly. It's just... I value your time as well. In your congregation, how many people do you have suffering from depression?
I couldn't say. Actually.
No, well, just look at it. Look at it, and I can guarantee you there is more than in the general public. In our congregation, really, there's more people having, some issues with their mental health. I'm not saying like serious, but depression. This kind of things, right? And this is throughout the organization. It's not like it's an isolated case. We can talk about the positive cases. There's many positive cases. I'm not saying that there is not. But there are negative cases, and you have to have the balanced view.
But by your own comments there, you said there's probably even more outside the organisation. So yes, we do suffer the same as everyone
No, it's not.
else.
It's less outside. It's more, and there was scientific research is done on this, and actually there is I'm not talking those extremes. There was a couple of the people who were biased, but there were done proper scientific research is done, and in fact, for example, in the U.S., Jehovah's Witnesses is the poorest and the least educated group of among all the religions. Did you know that? We're quite lucky in Britain because you've got quite a lot of social care, but in the US it's not that easy, and there are other countries where the situation is even worse. So
I've had the privilege of living in several countries amongst the brothers,
including
some very poor places in Africa.
Yeah, so
I don't recognise your description.
Well, I'm sorry, but
in effect, we've sat and listened to you, and if you need to, we can sit and listen till midnight if you'd like us to.
I don't think there is
in effect,
for that.
You keep saying about your research, your well-studied.
Brother, this is not important to me. These are situation examples. I'm not referring to that, and this is not really that keeps me away from Jehovah's Witnesses, because Jehovah's Witnesses, as the people, are wonderful, and I love you, all of you. Jesus died for all of us, for you, for me, for everybody, right? And I'm not saying that Jehovah's Witnesses are bad people. And I'm pointing my attention to the Bible, to the teachings that are not scriptural. This is the problem for me. And the other things are just because of that. These are the results of the outcomes of the structure.
But in effect, putting it bluntly, all your research, scriptural knowledge, personal study, in effect, you're asking us to put more credence on that than to our own governing body. If you stop and analyse what you're saying to us.
So, okay, no, that's, I think you're misinterpreting my words.
Well, what are you saying then?
So I'm saying that if you study the Bible, you will...
Who's saying?
I am saying.
Yes, exactly.
Right, that you have to study the Bible, right? And in fact, you have to follow Jesus Christ. Nowhere in the Bible says you have to follow any people, any men. Nowhere. You have to follow the Bible, really. Because Jesus said, I am the way. So I'm not saying this as Jesus said that I am the way. Follow the Bible. Because this is the Word of God. And that's it. If you actually read it, but you're refusing to do it, you're saying there is the governing body, there's middlemen, and
You're saying something incorrect there.
Well,
I believed that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life.
Correct.
From my personal study of the scriptures,
okay, I agree.
When I got baptized, I recognized Jehovah's organization, and that was before any of these brothers who are currently members of the governing body were members of the governing body, and I still feel the same thing about Jehovah's organization. I prefer to listen to the organizations.
Yes, and I prefer to listen to Jesus. It's not...
And you think they're not listening to Jesus?
Well, if they were listening to Jesus in every case...
They would agree with you?
No, they would agree with the Bible. I can be wrong.
You can indeed.
Yes, so if I'm wrong, you can take the Bible and prove me wrong. Right? So this is my point.
And I think you are wrong on the point of disfellowshipping.
Well, that's your point. Apparently, brothers in 1947 had a different view on that. Right? So if you actually study the history, you would find the real reasons for that.
So in the year 1900, it was okay to celebrate Christmas. Are you saying there's no...
That was the understanding at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly the words. That was the understanding at that point.
Yes. But then, celebrating the Christmas is something different because it's not directly contrary to the Bible. It requires some further knowledge of the culture and history. While disfellowshipping is contrary to the Bible and it's not supported by the Bible.
Yeah, so that's my point. So that's your explanation from the scriptures.
Yeah.
Jehovah's organization is giving us a different understanding from the scriptures. And it's not just because we blindly follow that mindlessly. We study it, we think about it.
Right, okay, brother, because I researched that, and that was my I really had in-depth Bible study about it a while ago. So if you want to talk about it, I can prepare, we can meet, and we can talk about it. right?
I've spent as much time as I need to on
Yeah.
that
So
subject.
I came here to just appeal from the process which I know is not scriptural, right? Because it's nowhere in the Bible. Can you show me one case in the Bible where there is 3 elders, 4 in my case, and they tell me you're being disfellowshipped? One case. The only case that is similar is when Jesus was tried by different heathen.
But that was not part of the Christian congregation.
Yes, but so there is nothing like that in the Christian congregation.
in the
So this is made up.
No, not at all.
Oh well,
We've discussed one example.
show me. Show me in the Bible where actually 3 elders or how many you want meet and they decide if someone is disfellowship or not. Because all I know, it was a person was supposed to follow this, to be approached by a person who believes they are doing something wrong, then convinced to change it. If they didn't listen, bring somebody else, and then bring the congregation. Tell the congregation, basically. So where is the congregation? You're not even from my congregation.
So in the account in Corinthians, it doesn't say how many were involved.
Majority knows
Well,
that.
no, it says the rebuke by the majority.
Yes, and the
No,
congregation
just
should
one-
be told. Are
just
you?
one moment.
So it's 3 people, a congregation. I mean, if you refer to the Mosaic law, every trial had to be in the city gate where there is plenty of witnesses. You're not allowed to have any witness.
Having made the decision, and however many were then
Right.
involved in that decision, then the congregation followed suit, and they distanced that person for however long it was before and after.
Yeah.
That was the rebuke that was given by the congregation, the majority.
Correct, but distancing is not shunning.
So just because
Distancing is not shunning. So you this is why I'm disputing, basically.
yeah, but
You
I
know?
think yes.
So we agree on that. Shunning is not distancing. Because if I might not invite you to my home for a dinner, but I can still talk to you. You know, as to my neighbor, I'm not inviting my neighbors to my house for a dinner, but I still speak to them. They are not shunned, because shunning is nowhere in the Bible, basically.
Okay, so I think you've explained really very well your feelings on that.
Yes.
Thank you.
So this is what they disagree. So, you know, and if that comes to my disfellowshipping, I'm considering taking legal steps.
That's your privilege.
Yeah, I've got privilege, you know, and in fact, you know, I made some steps to it. And if because I had legal issues with the society, so you know, so I started legal procedures, right? And if I am disfellowshipped, I will extend those legal procedures on others. Yeah.
And what's your motive then? If it's an organisation that you're not convinced
My
about-
motive is that I want to protect my family, right? Because if my son, who suffers from depression now, and my wife, who suffers from depression directly caused by the society, directly, right? She suffers from depression. If they suffer anymore, anything happens to them, I will take every legal step beyond what I'm going to do at the moment. Beyond. So I want to be clear, so nobody else ever say that, you know, they weren't warned, right? So this is my point. And I'm sorry it came to this point, but I did not ask to come here. I did not. I was actually forced to come here.
this evening.
Not this evening. This evening is just to appeal to the decision, but what I can say, probably you're going to uphold the decision.
And why do you think that?
But I can see from your attitude.
And that's nothing to do with your attitude.
Well, I disagree with some teachings, that's all, right? I explain myself. I've been charged with apostasy. Now, accused of apostasy. Now I'm charged with heresy. So now I'm told I cannot disagree. Because if I disagree with the society, then I have to be disfellowshipped. Right? Which will involve me being shunned. Right?
You chose to use the word earlier. If you choose to disassociate yourself, that's your privilege. What did you mean by that?
I don't want to dissociate myself. That's
what you said.
I said if I want to disassociate myself, it's my choice, my personal choice, right? And my choice. So if I decide to disassociate, I will do it whenever I want to. So this is my decision, basically. So
the local elders also have the privilege and responsibility to keep the congregation in harmony.
Yeah.
And they have to make decisions as well.
Yeah. So they can make decisions, but, as you know, the congregation is a charity. You know that. It's a charity. And in Britain, if you are a charity, any institution, you have to at least fulfill the minimum requirements for justice in case you're dealing with some procedures, not called judicial procedures, but I would say disciplinary actions. And that's even against the law. Just being tried without having right to any defense and so on, so any witness. That's against the law even.
Can I ask a question just here? Did you want any witnesses?
I did.
Do you want to call somebody as a witness for you?
Well, here?
Yeah.
Well, I cannot do it on the spot. Nobody's going to come in 5 minutes.
But is there somebody who you would feel needs to be a witness for you?
I would have to, for example, have a lawyer with me.
That's not a witness.
Well, it's someone who supports you, and actually, if you look, it's a witness of the procedure, as we may define. It's not someone, I'm not talking, the law does not say that you have a witness. Everyone has to have a right, everyone has to be able to have a representative, a person who can comfort the person. So that's the case.
This is not a legal proceedings. But if you feel that the accusations that were brought against you...
I'm not disputing accusation only, I'm disputing the whole process. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm disputing the process as well as the accusation. So if I'm being a part of a kangaroo court, it's basically, but this is what it is, as a kangaroo court, right? And you can press any charges against me. If it's a kangaroo court, you cannot respect that, because I believe strongly, wholeheartedly, that this is not biblical. Right. It's a policy, right? In fact, it was different in the past, and it might change, and probably it will change again in the future.
So, if just in theory, if there's an organisation that says you have to wear a black tie to come to that organisation, and you come in a red tie, and they put you outside.
Yeah.
If that's the known policy, do they have a right to do that?
Yeah, and then if they change a few years later that you have to shave your head, that would give me right to have some questions, wouldn't it?
So if you have any witness to the accusations that have been brought against you that will show that those accusations...
Well, do you know what the accusations were at all?
There's things that you do not feel that the government...
Well, so is it a crime? So I'm repeating my question again. Do you think I deserve to die for this? That I do not agree, I don't, or maybe don't understand, but nobody's willing to explain it to me, that some teachings are not scriptural. Do I deserve to die for that reason? And do you have any evidence in the Bible that simple disagreement on things would cause people being disfellowshipped?
We've given you evidence of that during this meeting. We do not want you to die.
Well, you do, because, those brothers want me to die. I don't know. Hopefully you won't. You don't want me to die, but...
We don't want you to die.
Okay.
We want to see you for eternity.
Right. Okay.
We are here because we...
But, brother, if we were in Israel, you would sentence me to death, wouldn't you?
I'm not Jewish.
Yeah, but if you were, it happened that I was born in Israel, for this, you would kill me.
I am not going on that hypotheticals. We are here.
Well, you were
under a
mentioning
different system.
you were mentioning an illustration about ties. That was hypothetical. Yeah. Now you're saying don't go on hypothetical. So if we talk, just talk about everything. Don't like I here because it's convenient. I will go hypothetical. Now it's inconvenient. I'm not going to go hypothetical. So right. So basically, you now because this is the equivalent. This fellowshipping is in your eyes is equivalent of sentencing person to death.
The Christian way.
No, that it is. If I am disfellowshipped tonight, tomorrow morning is Armageddon, I will die. Is that true?
Well,
is that true? Just answer me. It's a simple question.
If you were right,
that's.
If you were right, disfellowshipping, you would not.
Yeah.
If we are right.
Yeah.
But
you don't think obviously that I am right. So you think that I will die. And I deserve death. This is what you're doing, because I'm not talking about my perspective. I'm talking about your perspective.
Our desire is to help in any way we can to show what the scriptural points of these things are.
Yes.
And that is the view of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Brother, so how about let's meet and maybe let's start a Bible study with me, and we can have a discussion. You can convert me back to the same views as you think are correct, and the problem is solved. I can't see a problem, because as I said, I'm not stubborn about the views. This is what I studied. This is what the Bible, according to my understanding, says, and it's simple to me, right? I read tons of commentaries about the Bible. I read tons of manuscripts. I studied Peshitta. Do you know Peshitta? It's like an early church copy of the Bible in Coptic language. It's from Aramaic, directly. I read that, interlinear translations. I've been checking different things, even like things you might not be aware. Like, for example, different mistranslation. Like, for example, in the verse where it says the man is the head of a woman, right? Did you know, like in Greek, head didn't mean that is someone is in charge over somebody. A head was simply just our body part.
So we're not going to get into another topic.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying. I've spent that much time. So if you think you are right and you can convince me, I am open, because I am not stubborn. I read, I study, and I have one view on one thing today. I may change my view tomorrow if I see more evidence that's saying otherwise. So I'm not stubborn. And what you are trying to, I think, imply that I'm stubborn and I'm just,
So these brothers have met with you 3 times?
Yes.
We've met with you, so that's 4 times.
Yes.
Do you think we're going to get further along in this conversation?
If we take the Bible and we study verse by verse, topic by topic, we can't come to agreement. But this is not a setting that is, it's a trial, right? You just try me. It's not a Bible study. This is a simple difference, So I can even, I can even lie now. I heard, like, from the brothers that Brother Jackson lied because it was a court setting. So, I can lie as well now, apparently. Can I not? It's a different setting. So it's not a Bible study. So if you want to go deep into the topic, you have to take proper materials like in Greek dictionaries. We can check word by word what it means in dictionaries, and then we can come to a conclusion what the Bible really teach. So that's my point. But you've got the ball now. You can play it as you wish. You can disfellowship me. You can try to save me if you wish. And if you think you've got the truth, because if you've got the truth will stand for itself. You cannot lie. You can't just twist the truth, having the Bible in your hand.
You're right.
Yeah, so you can try.
Do you have any other questions?
I personally heard enough of how he feels, how he's expressed himself. I think he's been quite clear. So I personally don't feel, if he wants to talk anymore, I'm willing to listen, but I personally feel he's described his position clearly enough.
Right. So, do you feel I deserve to die, brother?
That is absolutely a hypothetical question, and we're not in Israel, and we do not have any prerogative to say whether you deserve to die or not.
Yeah.
We have the responsibility to hear what you're saying,
Right.
and decide whether you should or should not be disfellowshipped. It's then in Jehovah's hands to say who lives and who dies. So not being drawn into giving a rapid response to that hypothetical question.
Yeah. So it took, to be honest, I know this is your view. I mean, obviously my view is different because I believe, and the Bible supports that this not this decision that is not really, doesn't have any meaning, I would say, in Jehovah's eyes.
Yes, and as we've said before, you keep saying, I believe that.
Yeah. But what has meaning is the way. I'm not really that concerned about me, really, as I'm concerned of my family.
Yes.
But I say, if they get shunned, my son gets shunned by any person, and they progress with oppression, on top of the legal charges I'm going to start, So first of all, there will be about harassment, because this is what my family suffered. Now, my son shows clear signs of depression. My wife is on medication, by the way, for depression. Yeah, as a result of the actions of the brothers. And I'm not taking this anymore. I can't take any more of it. So if anything adds to that, I'm sorry to say that, but I will go further with that. So you were aware. So from my perspective, if you don't wish me to contact any people, I can stay away from them.
Would you mind giving us a few minutes about it?
How long is it going to take? Do you know?
Not too long, hopefully, but we don't want to keep you any longer.
That is like 10 minutes, 15 June.
We'll do it as quickly as we can.
Yeah, sure.
Would that be reasonable?
It will be reasonable. Yes.
10, 15.
Yeah. So, yeah. Brother John, would you like? You can have a look, so you will have intimate knowledge. No, that's right. It's a legal document from the county. Sorry. Oh, that's it.
I say is that we need to consult further, so we're not going to be able to give you a response tonight.
Right. When can I expect a consult?
We will try and get it sorted as soon as possible and get back to you.
Right. And how is going to be announced to me?
The brothers who contacted you before will give you a call as they did last time.
Okay. Fair enough.
And then we can meet up and we'll be able to do the rest.
Right. So do we need to meet up again, or?
I should think so. Yes.
So we another meeting. Yeah. Okay. Do you roughly know when?
I'm afraid not.
Okay. Well, anyway. That's good.
Yeah, I'm sorry that it's dragging on, but that's just...
No, it's all right. Don't worry. I mean, better that's than the decision. You know?
Thank you for coming this evening.
Yeah.
We don't want this to sound hollow, but please give our love to your wife and your son. And we are thinking of them, and we know it's difficult for them.
It is very difficult.
Yeah, and that we understand that, and that our love is with them, and we will do what we can, or more probably these brothers will do what they can to support your family, whatever the decision is.
I would probably prefer if they stay away from my family.
Well, that's your choice, yes.
Yeah, and I think it's the door. I think I did not lock it.
Might be just wind, so...
Yeah. So my wife, she actually suffers from depression, and as I said, this is a direct result of what Polish Bethel did, right? And it's just not one person. You could say it could be just one person that is bad. It's the whole chain of department we went through, from local, responsible to the area, then up, and then to the legal department. So this is very sad, but it was no sign of Christian love in it at all. Rather the opposite. But
anyway, what we want to do is convey our love to your wife and son.
Yeah. So you don't want to convey any love to me.
Our being here is a sign of our love for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, probably, but that's the procedure. You would have to be here anyway. You don't even know me, so that's the procedural stuff.
But out of love, without even knowing you, we have been willing to come and willing to come back.
Yeah.
Brother, I have deep love for the Bible and for the truth. And honestly, if you want me to come back, you have to prove me that with the Bible in hand. And I have no problems with coming back. If everything what I believe is wrong and you think it's right, take the Bible, have a Bible study with me. We can discuss. When I had my first Bible study, I had no knowledge about the Bible. Not at all. Now, I have better knowledge about the Bible than I ever had. So now I think I can study. Because when you study, you just actually go very deeply in the topic. This is the difference.
Could I make a small suggestion?
Of course you can.
Do you ever, when you read a chapter, do you ever listen to it being read to you, or do you prefer not to do that? You've got it on the tablet, presumably.
I do read and listen.
Yeah.
But I primarily read.
Yeah. Well, me too. And I like to look at cross-references and
correct.
Go in depth to it. We were very moved. My wife and I decide each morning when we read the day's text together that in addition to any other Bible reading we do, we decided we would read the whole chapter where the day's text comes from every morning.
Yeah.
And I won't tell you what our reaction is when we find it's Psalm 119 yet again.
Okay.
It's the longest chapter. But just maybe 2 or 3 weeks back, we had John chapter 17.
Yes.
And we listened to it being read.
Uh-huh.
Can I suggest that you listen to that?
Yeah.
And listen to that heartfelt prayer that Jesus made and his wish for his brothers to be at unity, be at one together.
Yes, in Christ.
Yes. Yeah, listen to that and just think about...
Yeah. So I would, because I'm not arguing really, it's just this, I'm quite nervous because of this situation, obviously, so I think you just take that into consideration, and I can show you this.
But just that small suggestion, and think about the application for all of us when we're thinking of relating to those that until now you've called your brothers.
Yes. So what I do, so look, I read. Oh my goodness. I read obviously New World Translation. I compare it with the Interlinear Translation. I've got Bible Hub, which got many translations. I compare that. I compare with Greek. I got myself Greek Concordance, Strong's, for King James Version. Right? I've checked all of that. I've actually checked every verse now, how it's rendered. Obviously, those who are, not so obvious. And, the more I check, the more I actually study about things. Because some things are maybe simple for example, about the head. Like, for example, doesn't mean your head. In Greek, the head means just your head. It doesn't mean someone is superior over you, superiority. Or the other meaning is the beginning, a source. And actually that was rendered, and I checked that was rendered in Septuagint, because Septuagint was translated from Hebrew to Greek for the Jews. So they knew what actually was the meaning, right? And everywhere in the Bible, there's actually 200 cases, almost 200 cases, I think, and 186 off the top of my head, when the word head was translated. It was always translated into a supervisor or a similar meaning, never to head. Right? From head, Hebrew head, it didn't mean head. There's actually 6 cases when it was translated to head, in the meaning that it was someone superior. But by that point, actually, it was like a language carbon, and that meaning went to, it was used among the Jews. I'm Polish, for example, and my son, he will use a word that has one word from English, but he wouldn't, for example, he wouldn't use appropriate word in Polish, but he thinks like the same word applies to,
Anyway, my apologies. In making that small suggestion, I wasn't meaning to open up a discussion again, but just a small suggestion to read that chapter.
Yeah. I'll read even more than one chapter because, initially, it's quite nice. So when you read Bible Hub, you can switch off the verses and chapters, because that was actually initially how it's written. Because, if someone puts a stop at the end, it's like subconsciously you think this is the end of the topic. So actually, if you remove that, you just go and you can grab the context, because not always the end of the chapter is put in a place where the thought is not continued anymore. So this is what I do. I don't even read one chapter. I read more. That's quite, So I said, honestly, I spent quite a lot of time on Bible study. So brothers, I don't think I can keep you any longer here. So I'll be waiting.
We'll be in touch as soon as we can. And
right.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, you are welcome and coming for me.
I like that Maciej was quoting the scripture, mercy triumph over judgment. And he says, Jehovah is a merciful God, and he gives every opportunity to help someone. Or the elder said, Jehovah is a merciful God and gives every opportunity to help someone. This is a loving provision. And Maciej says, no, this isn't loving. Let's not make up definitions.
Jehovah is a merciful God.
I don't doubt it. Jehovah is, yes.
And he gives every opportunity for us to be able to help somebody. And this really is a loving provision. We've left our families to...
Come on, it's not loving provision. I've spoke to those guys for 3 hours, 4 hours in total. So I'm sorry, but this is not loving provision. Unless your love is a different definition.
Well,
has a different definition.
We've left our families to come.
Well, I appreciate it, right? Because it was my appeal, but I would rather call things by their proper name. Let's don't make up definitions.
So they're trying to redefine what loving means, or what a loving provision means. And looking at the situation, it's not loving at all with what was going on. They were trying to get him to self-incriminate himself. They weren't trying to help him. They basically had prejudged the situation before he even got there. And then he asked the question, do you know what the difference is between apostasy and heresy? They don't answer the question.
They don't know the answer.
Yeah. So he says, it wasn't proven to me what I did. Said, what have I done that I deserve death? Which I thought was a brilliant question.
So do you know the difference between apostasy and heresy?
Well, carry on, explain to us your reasoning.
Well, so that's my reasoning. That's my first step, my first point. Second point is, that's I don't think apostasy was proven to me then. But basically, that's my point. So, what, in other words, what have I done? I deserve death.
Death has not been mentioned.
Well, but that's, if we were in Israel, you would kill me.
We're not in Israel.
But if we were, spiritually, you're sentencing me to death. If I am disfellowship, I'm death. Upon Armageddon, I'm dead. So you're sentencing me to death. So my question is, what have I done? I deserve to die. It's a simple question, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't feel this question was answered.
What have I done that I deserve death? Which I thought was a brilliant question, because really what he's being condemned to, or what they think they're condemning him to. He says, after Armageddon, I'm dead. So it's really a simple question. They didn't answer. He says, apostasy is abandoning God. I didn't abandon God. So this accusation doesn't fit. He says, I wasn't told what the apostasy was, and the brethren didn't pray over me. So the scriptures,
They don't want to hear it.
apply to at all.
Yeah, they don't want to hear it.
And all they did is make him feel worse, he said. And instead of them recognizing, oh, we're sorry, we didn't mean to make you feel worse, they just kept going down the path. He says, I wasn't told what the apostasy was, and the brethren didn't pray over me. So the scriptures,
They don't want to hear it.
apply to at all.
Yeah, they don't want to hear it.
And all they did is make him feel worse, he said. And instead of them recognizing, oh, we're sorry, we didn't mean to make you feel worse, they just kept going down the path. It was already predetermined.
They don't want to debate individual verses.
They didn't want to read the scriptures.
Let's
and not
leave
in
the
context.
Bible out of this. We've got a hearing. It's really what they're saying.
I wasn't called for this judicial, that one. Neither this one, as this is a consequence of the previous meeting. Brothers did not pray over me, there was no oil, however you can imagine that. And that made me feel worse than before. I didn't feel healed. So it's not working, or it was misapplied, or was actually not applied at all. So if you look at it in the context, with the context of Romans 14:1, where it says, welcome the man having weaknesses in his faith, but do not pass judgment on differing opinions.
So we're not going to enter into any debates about individual verses. We want to know.
Well, you're using the verses, so I'm replying with other verses, because if you pick verses that are showing one side of the story, then you cannot ignore the other side of the story, because the Bible is balanced. You can't just pick one side and just ignore everything else that is left.
So they asked him, did the brothers try and help you before the judicial? So we don't want to try and help you now. They're just basically judging him. They're not even giving him a chance to explain himself.
And then they all got in their clown car and took off.
Have you ever received any conversations with these brothers who tried to help you before it became a judicial?
I cannot recall that. If brothers remember, that's fine, but they can remind me, but I can't recall that.
So, you've said to us not to take verses out of context. There are other verses in the scriptures that talk about the disfellowshipping arrangement.
Can we read them?
We can read as many as you want, but
Okay.
we have to consider the context of each of
Yes,
them.
I'm very happy.
So
with
there is a time for helping a person with doubts,
Right.
and that's a time for shepherding visits. There's also a time.
Sorry, give me a second.
Yeah, so just a simple point that you've selected one verse. I can see some copies of some old Watchtowers on the back as well. So you're obviously picking up information from others. So you've got some verses that don't take it out of context.
Yes.
That verse is not talking about a judicial arrangement. It's talking about the need to shepherd. There are other verses in their context that talk about the need for a more serious action. And the scriptures talk about.
Well, can we read those verses?
In 1 Corinthians, you know them very well.
He said there's a time for helping people with doubts, shepherding visits. He says this isn't the time. It isn't the time? What does that mean then? Were they just literally just there to judge him? Again, how is that a loving provision? Unless, as Maciej said, they're just redefining what the phrase loving provision means.
We'll let you know what loving provision is and whether or not you will get it. But for now, it's a hearing. Really, that's what. If you break it down, that's what they're saying.
I've spent last 2 years, on studying the history of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Brother Russell, Brother Rutherford, and all the brothers I could find information about.
If I might say respectfully, that's still in its infancy, just 2 years. I think the brothers here collectively have got several decades more.
So he said, I spent the last 2 years studying Watchtower's history. And the elder said, only 2 years? Well, with all of us together, we have a lot more than just 2. And they didn't want to talk about the history at all either. Again, they didn't want to talk about the scriptures. They didn't want to fact check the modern history of Jehovah's Witnesses.
But as you know, I am here because I'm appealing my disfellowshipping.
So that's why dear brother here is just asking you, on what basis, please?
On what basis? What
are you appealing? What is it?
Because I disagree with the fact that apostasy was not proven to me, in the sense of apostasy. I've just read you that I should not be judged upon different opinions, right? That way. And do you think I deserve to die for this? That I have a different opinion on something. You believe so? You're nodding yes. I'm
listening to what you're saying.
Right. So, but you're not answering my question. I'm asking you, do you believe I should die for...
I think our chairman has already said that that's not the case.
But this is essentially what's happening. I was actually sentenced to death by his brothers here.
You don't want to use language.
But this is, you believe that people who are outside of the congregation, they will die in Armageddon, will they?
We do our best to help ones come back, and that will be done with you as well.
He said, you've sentenced me to death, and those outside of the congregation are going to die in Armageddon. They didn't seem to respond to that either.
Oh, joy. You just... It's like they feel they yield the sword of God, and they're getting rid of the gangrene. They're cutting the gangrene off in their mind. And so did the scribes and Pharisees. They thought they were doing the right thing, and they hated anyone who's doing anything right.
Well, they agree that the Bible's more important than the teachings. Where he asked them, is the Bible more important than the teachings?
So you feel you've lost trust in this organization that is Jehovah's Witnesses?
Well, I've been studying the Bible, and I've noticed like some teachings are not according to the Bible, and and I feel like you should follow the Bible. Do you agree? Well, the Bible is more important than teachings.
So, Jehovah said that he would establish a faithful and discreet slave that would give the food at the proper time. That was the channel he used. Even the Apostle
What is the
Paul-
proof of that? Can you prove me?
Well, that's what
This is the channel, because there's no proof. I mean, when Jesus came, there was the heaven opened. There was so many prophecies fulfilled on Jesus. But now, how can you prove when did this channel start? This is the main question.
Let's take it from a different other approach.
Yeah.
If it isn't Jehovah's Witnesses, who is it? Who is teaching?
Jesus Christ.
No, that's our leader. Which
Yeah.
people on earth is Jehovah using today to accomplish his work? If it's not Jehovah's Witnesses, who is it?
So you're saying the Jehovah is using Anthony Morris, Samuel Hurd, just 8 people in America.
Not as individuals, but as a composite group.
Okay.
Very
So where did you get it in the
yeah.
Bible? Because it's not supported by the Bible, this teaching.
And then he said, well, there is a channel. One of the elders said, well, there is a channel at this time. How does that even answer the question? And then can you prove there's a channel at this time? What does the Bible say? They didn't want to get into that either. And so he said, I have doubts about these very things. And the brethren and the elders there weren't trying to help him.
In fact, I don't know, do you have maybe like a Greek dictionary at home?
I do, yes.
Yeah. So if you check the word Antichrist, right? Do you know who Antichrist is?
Will you tell me?
Yeah, so Antichrist is not someone who is against Christ. That's not the full definition of this word. An Antichrist is someone who puts themselves in place of Jesus Christ, right? So if you're a channel of communication, right? Another word, you're a medium, right? Medium is a channel of communication, right? Media. In other words, you are a mediator. So,
still addressing the words through the chairman, if I may. I'm asking permission, but may I just continue this small point?
Yes. Yeah.
It's just a very simple.
I thought the point he made that, he said the Antichrist is someone who puts themselves in place of Jesus. And he says, for the great crowd, they have no mediator. Well, who's in between them and Jesus and Jehovah? Well, they have to believe the governing body, the anointed governing body class is there. So they're the mediator. So aren't they then putting themselves in place of Christ? Isn't that what an antichrist is? By putting themselves in place of Christ. I thought that was a very important question. Again, they didn't want to answer that. I'm not even sure they caught the idea.
Well, their canned answer is always, well, God always had an organization on earth. He always had a people on earth. In ancient times, he worked through the patriarchs, then he went to the Israelites, then he went to the Christians, and now it's us. And they believe that that's the lineage of how God speaks to mankind. But except in the Australian Commission, when you're not even implying such a thought. I mean,
well, Maciej answered that too. He said, they said, Moses, right? No one contested Moses' appointment.
That's because God appointed them.
Yeah.
It caught the mountain on fire and shook the earth.
Yeah, they were miracles that proved
Moses is in charge. I get it.
Yeah, there were miracles that proved his appointment. What proves the governing body's appointment? Is it all these?
Because Rutherford got out of prison and then they started thinking about cleansing the temple, and God chose it because of that.
And so all of Watchtower prophecy revolves around that prison experience. The sheep and goats, when Jesus says, when did you serve me? When I was sick and in prison? And Rutherford says, oh yeah, I know Jesus said that, but I was sick when I was in prison. It's all about me. And slowly but surely takes many scriptures about Jesus, takes all these parables, all these Old Testament pictures, and basically applies it to Watchtower after 1919 or 1918 at the time.
Conveniently, when he basically took it over.
Yeah. And so if you haven't seen the rest of our discussions, we go into that. And again, we're getting into a new area here where we're going to start moving into the Nazi period and discussing that, but specifically in regards to not only these scriptures that have been attempted to apply to Watchtower, but where did those ideas come from? And how does that affect what choices were made during the Nazi period? That is another discussion for another time, but a very interesting one. Stay tuned to the channel for that.
And so on, right? And then Brother Russell died, and Brother Rutherford became the president, right? So I don't know how much you know how Brother Rutherford became the president of the Watchtower. Do you know any details how that happened?
I probably know a lot more than you think I do, but
okay. As brother said, he knows. You know, about Brother Rutherford, how he became the president, how he actually staged a coup to become one, and he kicked out brothers from Bethel, Brother Sturgeon, who meant to be his Brother Russell's successor, and actually they told him up on Russell's grave when they were giving talks during the funeral, they approached him and said, "We expect you to resign." So this there's more to it, right? Like there's. Have you ever heard about Olin Moyle case? That's that's important because we need to establish something before we go further because this is important. Have you heard about Brother Olin Moyle or Brother Fisher? Brother Fisher was actually in the publishing committee. He was kicked out as well because Rutherford he wouldn't agree with Rutherford's, and basically they just kicked him out.
There was a lot of commotion at that time. Yes,
I like that he asked him, "Do you know how Rutherford got control?" Because he's talking about the Rutherford's coup book, and he knows how Rutherford got control. They didn't know that answer, and they weren't willing to discuss it.
See, even if I were an elder, I'd be like, how? This is what I heard. What'd you hear? I don't get how they just protect. They're trained. It's like taking a Rottweiler and Dobermans and training them to guard the junkyard, guard the cars, guard the warehouse. Anything comes in, bite them. They defend without a question of reasoning, an opening of reasoning to hear another thought. That is dangerous. That really is. And you could see the danger because of the consequences of what it's done to people and other people's lives, that they do it too, not just their own.
Well, in response to that question about Rutherford's history and how he took over, the elders basically said, well, there was a lot of commotion at the time, but what we're trying to do here is move on to another subject. Again, they didn't want to answer any of the points he raised. They didn't want to even look at the scriptures or discuss the scriptures. They didn't even want to read the scriptures in the context when asked. They wanted to isolate specific scriptures, but never look at the verses before or after. If you have to isolate a scripture to prove a point, instead of looking at the context, if it may or may not support it, what kind of evidence is that?
I watched years ago someone was trying to show what you were just talking about right there, and they masterfully took words out of a recording and showed how easy it is to change public opinion. And this one said this, but well, wait, let's do this and then give it to them and see how the public responds. And it's the same thing with the scriptures, like you just said. You got to take the context around what they were getting at. And like one of the governing bodies says, scripture defines scripture. Scripture interprets scripture. So if you don't have supporting scripture to go with the idea, you're missing the point in the first place.
And if you look at the lives of the individuals that are leading the society, or even, we'll pick on Rutherford because he is the easiest one to pick on Watchtower, but there are others that you could pick on. What kind of lives did they lead? What were things that were said about them? The Olin Moyle trial said many things about Rutherford that wasn't contested. And
Jeff,
Moyle,
we're not here to talk about that right now.
Olin Moyle won the case. So, or the George Fisher stories. So if you see our Man Who Dared Disfellowship Rutherford discussion, Rutherford was involved in some nefarious things and probably would have been disfellowshipped with the 2 or 3 witnesses, because in those days they took it to the entire congregation. But again, the timing of that one was unfortunate because Fisher died and then the other witnesses decided to drop the case. But, looking back at where they were at the time, where Watchtower was headed, and we're going to get into that in the Nazi period discussion that we have coming soon, but seeing how many people were damaged or have been damaged, how many people were hurt, how many people died because of the path that was chosen by an individual who was accused of many of these bad things in court.
It always comes back to the point here that you are asking not to be thrown out of an organisation you don't believe exists.
I don't agree to be disfellowshipped. I can agree voluntarily not to come here, if that's your will. But to me, and I mentioned that the disfellowshipping is basically it's like a kangaroo court, right? It's actually mentioned once in the Bible, and this is when Jesus was put in front of the Sanhedrin, right? It was at night, similar to me. It was, well, probably more than there is you here, and no witnesses.
Okay.
Right. So that's the only reference in the Bible. I'm sorry, but this is how I look at it.
Right.
And there's nowhere in the Bible say that if someone disagree with your view, you are not allowed to speak to them, or you will be disfellowshipped as well.
Jesus was disfellowshipped, basically, by the Sanhedrin on the final night of his life. And they brought false witnesses against him.
And they did the same thing, because when they arrested him, I walked about in the public. Why didn't you arrest me in front of? They don't want it out in public. They want it in secret.
That wasn't even about misunderstandings, which was this whole case here with Maciej. This was literally they're already prejudging the situation and brought in false witnesses to make sure that it went the way that they wanted it to go.
No, that's important. Listen, that's important. It's about my life, really. So, unless you think my life is not important.
It's sticking on to one topic and then moving on to the next. That's what we're trying to do.
Okay, right. Sorry.
So we can come to that in a minute.
Why are you fighting to stay in an organisation that you don't feel strong an attachment to?
Right, because if I get disfellowshipped, right, I'll be subject to all the treatment that the disfellowshipping people get. Disfellowship people get. Like, I will not be allowed. Well, others will not be allowed to speak to me. or they'll be actually risking being disfellowshipped, which is foreign to the Bible, right? And I think that my wife is going to take a toll of that. She's in fact now depressed now from the contacts with the Bethel, and my son, he is depressed because of that, of the last the two conversations I had with the last judicial committee. He started talking about suicide, So this is my point. So that's my position. I just don't think this is right because it's evil.
He also said, "This is my life," unless you think my life's not important. So, when said, you're basically judging me to death. And they said, "This is my life. If you don't think my life is important, let's discuss these things." And they just wanted to move on to another subject.
They knew where they were going.
Yeah. They had a plan and they were sticking to it. And they didn't want to be diverted from the path. But again, was there love or compassion there? As an outsider, one who's never been a Jehovah's Witness, I don't see it. From the outside, when I hear this recording, it looks like it was all prejudged and that they weren't even trying to help the individual. They were trying to get him. Go ahead.
I recall years ago, there was an article years ago, I think it was in the Watchtower, of someone wrongly disfellowshipped. But yet he kept going and because he was serving Jehovah, not himself and not men. And it's almost as if no matter what they do, you can't, there's no justice ever executed in this. So if you're sitting in front of a group of men who wrongly punish you, on top of it, you have to keep going to show you're loyal to Jehovah, instead of just saying these people are nuts. I'm not part of the men, the Pharisees, the scribes. They cover like every base to try and manipulate you in every way.
And how does this impact people's lives? We already heard the story with Michael and his friend and the suicide attempts. And Maciej says the same exact thing here. He says basically that his own son was so distraught. It's affecting not only Maciej, but it's affecting his family. So his son is so distraught over this, he was contemplating suicide.
How old is his son?
My son's age, so he's 16. 16? Yeah.
Well, I could just see now the status in the congregation goes down. Now you're in, we're better than you. And it really is, if you look at it, the caste system in India, especially old India, where literally your status meant everything in life. And that people, again, going back to the conversation, prominent ones in the congregation, they've been using that term for decades. Shouldn't you have fixed the idea of there being prominent ones by now, if you've known there are prominent ones?
The first shall be last and the last shall be first. It's your attitude.
Everything in reverse that
should be the servant of all. Finally, the last thing I want to mention is that it's just like with the gospel accounts. There's 4 different gospel accounts. Each one tells a story from their own perspective. And for example, Luke, he's getting multiple witnesses to tell the story, and he's trying to lay the story out in order. So all these various witnesses, and they're all telling basically the same story. Here we have multiple examples of individuals who are telling similar stories. I think there's so many of these people that have been abused through this disfellowshipping procedure. that their very lives have been impacted, suicides, or other situations that this shunning procedure causes. I think it's just like that 1947 Awake that we looked at. You know, how they were criticizing, Watchtower was criticizing the Catholic Church for taking the disfellowship procedure too far. And then only to turn around and take the disfellowship procedure too far. And I think even to further extremes. Again, Watchtower has asked us to fact check the modern history of Jehovah's Witnesses. That's what we're trying to do. But also fact check some of the interpretations of these scriptures. And for this disfellowship discussion, that's what we've attempted to do.
And we even ask you, fact check us.
Fact check the fact checkers. Thank you again, Paul. This has been a very fascinating discussion. Thank you all for watching. Like and subscribe. Leave some comments. Let us know what you'd like to see in the future. Get a whole story, not just the Watchtower's perspective, but from all the various splinter groups. What were they saying? So until next time, keep reading.